Hello guys and welcome back to Deck Doctor. This is episode 2, which will be covering Yellow Archers. Now I've been playing this deck a lot on stream recently and I've had great success with it against mid-range red. Now when I did my mid-range red video, I talked about how I don't feel like it has a counter. This could potentially be a great counter to that deck. Thank you very much as well for all the feedback that you guys have given me about this video. I've taken it on board and I've made some improvements to the Deck Doctor episode to give you some more information. So this deck is kind of a mid-range deck, but has elements of aggression as well. You are able to control the board pretty easily with your removal cards like Wind Soldier, Soul Drain and Last Nightmare, but also your Archer cards with the mobility cards such as Fanatic and Flashwind. You're able to control the board with those as well. So it plays very much like mid-range red. You control the wells, you remove your opponent's threats, and then eventually you drop a giant Zealous Crusader to finish your opponent off. So let's go into the individual cards that are featured in this deck and talk a little bit about them. So the core creatures of this deck are the Windstorm Archer and Orodrim Sagittarius, and these two cards will help you control the board at range, not putting your creatures at threat, but also generate additional Faeria through Sagittarius's effect. Another card that's great for controlling the board with tremendous mobility is the Windstorm Charger. Now both the Windstorm cards get buffed up by events, so it helps you in clearing creatures, and you also have other cards in the deck that support this strategy through shifting them about. Flashwind, Origin Fanatic, but we'll go into those cards a little bit later. Outland Ranger was a card that featured in the mid-range red deck. It's a fantastic card, but the Campfire synergizes really well with the Windstorm cards, and not only buffing their health, but also temporarily buffing their stats to help you clear other creatures. And finally, we have Kaleem, the legendary of the deck. One of the best legendaries in the game, easily top 3 for crafting, I would say. And this card is fantastic. It's a flyer, it has charge 2, it is very mobile, but also its effect allows you to produce additional momentum and aggression, but you can also use these followers to gain Faeria as well. So he's a very versatile creature. So next up, we'll move on to the removal. So yellow has access to some of the best removal in the game, Last Nightmare being the only true hard removal in Faeria. But of course they also have access to Wind Soldier and Soul Drain. Now Wind Soldier is fantastic because it can collect Faeria, and when I go into land placement later I'll talk a little bit more about that. But Wind Soldier can also be buffed by the Campfire from the Outland Ranger, and this is great for clearing Axe Grinders that have been buffed, Shemmed Pests, so it gives it additional reach and has some great synergies. Last Nightmare is your premium removal. You'll use that card to take out big threats, but it's also really good for gaining tempo. So if your opponent invests a lot of Faeria into summoning one guy to maybe start collecting, and you have a Last Nightmare in hand, and you say have an Archer or something, or you just have one creature, it might be just worth Last Nightmare in it because he's invested all his resources into that creature, and you can strip that creature from the board and they'll have to start from scratch gaining Faeria through production rather than harvesting. And Soul Drain is just a nice, cheap removals event, just like Cypher's Wrath. The healing can make a difference sometimes, but it's great for just picking off those Faeria gatherers. So yeah, that covers the removal. Let's move on to some of the event cards and mobility cards you'll be using in this deck. So one of the beauties of this deck is its mobility. You can move your creatures around the board really well with stuff like Origin Fanatic and Flashwind, and this opens up your opponent's defenses because you can get access to their creatures using stuff like Flashwind, which they would think you probably can't. And that's one of the beauties yellow has had for a while. You know, we've seen yellow control be really strong in the past, and it's mainly down to its mobility. So Origin Fanatic is a great body for free Faeria, but its move ability allows you to zip around your Windstorm Charger to clear something, or even push some damage, but it can also target itself. So if you just need to move the Fanatic into a better position, you can do that. And another thing to consider as well, it does have jump, so it's a very mobile creature itself, and it's great for double collecting, and it's also great for challenging small creatures from your opponent. Kaleem's Prayer is a great card in this deck because you have archers. Archers are going to be pinging your opponent's faces with those arrows, and then you'll be able to draw additional cards, power up your windstorm based creatures, but also gain additional Faeria. So Kaleem's Prayer is just a fantastic card in this deck overall. And finally, Flashwind, again, very much like Fnatic, a mobility card, but as it's an event, it'll also charge up your Windstorm cards. And it's a great card to keep with Kaleem, because if you drop an early Kaleem, you can have him go face very early and start building some momentum. So that covers the event cards. Let's talk about the primary win condition of this deck. And the last card to feature in this deck is the infamous Zealous Crusader. Now, the reason this card is so good in this deck is because your archers are just chipping away slowly at your opponent's health. Maybe only doing 1 or 2 damage, but what's really important is they buff this card up. And this card can grow into a real monster. And like I said, yellow only has access to hard removal, so this card can be really difficult for certain decks to deal with. And even as just a 6/6 or an 8/8, it could be the last push you need to finish the game. So you'll be wanting to set up this guy even quite near your opponent's wells, but because you have all those mobility cards which I talked about a little while ago, you're able to zip this card around the board and find angles for lethal very easily. So that sums up all the cards in the deck. Let's take a look at the Mulligan. So this deck has the luxury of having quite a few cards you can mulligan for. You have your archer cards, which are going to be fantastic because they allow you to apply early pressure, but also buff up your Zealous Crusaders in your deck. Outland Ranger is a great early gatherer, same with Windstorm Charger, but it's also quite a threat itself because of how mobile it is and how it can zip around the board and make great trades with event cards. Kaleem is just the golden boy in your opening hand because he is such a big threat, and if you can combine him with, again, mobility cards, he can put enormous pressure on your opponent. And Soul Drain is always great to keep, I think. I wouldn't keep it if you don't have any of these in your hand, but sometimes you might want to if you know what deck you're going up against, because you can eliminate an early Faeria gatherer, but also you can have it synergize with your Windstorm cards. So any of these cards I think are great to keep in your opening hand. So let's talk about land placement. You want to curve your lands around the side, a bit like mid-range thread, but you want to be able to develop them a little bit quicker because you want your Windstorm Chargers to be able to have access to your enemy's creatures. So you start on the second tier of land placement. If you look at my early land placement video on your YouTube channel, I explain these different tiers that you can develop your land on. And yeah, so that you just want to curve it around there, and this gives you access to not only the Faeria wells, but also your opponent's creatures as well. And as you can see here, I've placed some deserts to show the kind of key deserts you want to be setting up. So the one in front of your orb gives you access to your archers. You know, your archers will be able to hit face from there. And then you have the 2 deserts next to the wells. Now the one on the bottom well, which is your well, this is a great place for putting Origin Fanatics to double collect, Outland Rangers and Windstorm Chargers and those type of creatures, but this also allows you to collect Faeria with your Wind Soldiers when you're trying to remove threats from the board. And the top desert is kind of the luxury desert because this allows your Zealous Crusader to hit face because of his charge 2, and it also allows you to develop other threatening creatures like your Windstorm Chargers and your Origin Fanatics. Your mobility gives you a lot of reach, so I would say these are probably the most important deserts that you'll need, but you'll be wanting to draw more cards with this deck. You don't want to be developing loads of land because you want to be digging deep into your deck to find the power-ups and all the threats. So once you get these key land places, start drawing cards until you're ready to set up that Crusader for the win. So let's talk about budget replacements. Not everyone's going to have access to all these cards. There's a legendary, there's quite a few epics. So I've put some replacements down that you could put in instead of some of the cards. So Kaleem, for example, you could just include another Zealous Crusader, and that will probably fill the... I think it fills the role of Kaleem quite well. You just get another late game threat to push some damage later on. Windborn is a good alternative to Kaleem's Prayer, which is also an epic, which might be a bit costly for some players. But you can also use Soul Pact instead. These two are cheap events which synergize with the deck quite well. Sagittarius, I would say, is a hard one to replace because this is an Archer's deck after all. So if you're looking to replace maybe the Prayers and the Kaleem, I would suggest these cards I've displayed on the screen. They will be cheap replacements until you build enough resources to craft the cards you need to finish the deck. So that wraps up this episode of Deck Doctor covering the Yellow Archers deck. I hope you enjoyed this guide, and thank you very much for all your feedback. I read all the comments that you guys post on the YouTube channel and on Reddit, and I'll take any feedback that I'm given to improve this for you guys. So thanks again. Of course, if you do like this video, be sure to share it with all your friends who are playing Faeria so they can get up to speed with the metagame and start crafting these great decks. And of course, if you do like this channel, be sure to subscribe to us as I post regular Faeria content. And also check out the social media links on the side of me. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Deck Doctor. And I haven't decided what deck I'm going to do. I'll probably play some decks on stream and make my decision then. So be sure to tune into that as well at GosuTV_Faeria over on twitch.tv. And I'll hopefully see you guys there. So take care. Have a great evening. I'll catch you later.